Hey guys, it's Jake. Got another review for you today. Today we're going to be talking about the Crave. This is a review I've been meaning to do for quite a while, but the weather has been pretty uncooperative. But I did manage to finally get enough footage to throw this together, so we're going to get into it. So before I start, I just want to make sure for those who haven't watched my reviews before, just a little bit of context. I max out around 400 feet distance or so. Um, I can sneak over it if I get lucky, but I would say 400 is usually my max. So I would say I'm a medium speed arm. So keep that in mind as you're watching the review. Um, so I do have footage as well. We're gonna go through that kind of after I go through and introduce the disc a little bit. Um, but I have video of no wind, headwind, and tailwind to give you a little bit of everything. So we will look at that in a bit too. But to start out, I just kind of want to talk about the Crave in general. So the Crave is an Axiom mid-range. It's a fairway disc. The numbers on it are 6.5 speed, 5 glide, -1 turn, and 1 fade. And you can pretty much just ignore those numbers because I, I don't know, they're not terribly accurate in my opinion. So we'll break it down. So the 6.5 speed, just in general, the half speeds are just kind of weird to me. I don't understand. It feels the profile is sharper and faster than what I would think of a relay being, and a relay is a speed 6. So I would have just called it a 7, but they called it a 6.5, whatever. I really don't care so much about that, but it is faster than a 6 speed. The glide of 5, it's accurate for some of them. Some of the Craves that are domier do really glide a lot. So I would give them a little bit extra bonus, maybe 5.5 to 6 for glide, because they are one of the glidier discs that I have. But it is really just the domi ones. The flat ones, yeah, 5 is fine. The turn is probably the most confusing of it, the numbers, because the -1 turn is really, I don't know, I don't really feel like I've had a -1 turn Crave. All of my Craves have either been like no turn at all or a lot of turn, like -2 or more. So that's a little mystifying. We'll talk about the different types of Craves in a minute here. But yeah, so the turn, the fade of 1, that's probably accurate. I think all of them have about that 1 fade. It's just a real gentle. It's enough to flex out, but it's not anything heavy. So yeah, that's sort of how MVP describes the Crave. Um, and I kind of feel like there's really two types of Craves. And so I have both types, and I'm going to kind of show you what I got here. The first type of Crave are these guys. Um, and they're the Craves that I'm going to call the straight Craves or the stable Craves. So these Craves are the ones that have pretty much no turn and are a little domier and glidier, or at least the Proton ones here are. These three are all Proton Craves. They're all 173 and 174-ish weights, and they're this sort of glimmer. I don't know if you can see in the thing here, but it's actually like a glimmer Proton. There's little like specks of glitter or whatever in there. Anyway, and they're a little bit more domey than the regular Crave, in my opinion. These ones feel like the domes have kind of come down a little bit. I don't know if because they're smashed in the bag or not, but when I first got them, they're very, very domey. Um, so yeah, these discs are very straight, um, and this is what I expected based on the comments I'd seen in the past, because this is also what you hear about older runs of Craves being. People talk about the Crave being a pretty stable to overstable disc. Um, and I would agree that these ones pretty much fly like that. And this other disc here, this is an Eclipse 1.0 Crave. It's pretty light. It's a 162, but it also, while it wasn't as domey, it's flatter and always has been. Um, it does resist the turn relatively well, considering how light it is and how much more wear there is on this. Because this is my oldest Crave. So it turns a bit now, but it flew a lot straighter when I first got it. Um, so yeah, these are the ones that I kind of call the straight Craves. Now the other Craves are these guys. These ones are what you're starting to see now more commonly when people buy Craves. The Neutron, the Cosmic Neutron, specifically the newer Sarah Hokum ones, have all been described as being sort of understable, as well as these new. This is one of the new Glow 2.0 prototype Craves, very flippy. These are the ones that are like -2 or more when it comes to the turn, and they are a little bit flatter. Again, it's hard to see on the camera, and I think they've all kind of evened out now, where it's maybe not as noticeable, the dominess. But originally the Proton ones were pretty dromy. At any rate, so those are the sort of two types of Craves, and it's unclear whether moving forward whether the newer Proton Craves, because the Proton Craves that I have were from a run in, I want to say December of 2020 or January of 2021. I want to say they came out. So they're pretty new still. They're the most recent Proton Craves that came out. But everything that's come out since then in Neutron or Cosmic Neutron has been flippier. So I don't know if they're all going to be flippy moving forward, or if the next run of Protons are going to be stable again, or if they're going to try to stable up the Neutron ones, or what the deal is. Or maybe we'll just always end up with two very different discs depending on the plastic. But yeah, that's sort of my experience with the discs that I've been throwing, and pretty much everything other than the one that I mentioned was light. So as I mentioned, this guy's a 162, but everything else, this is a 172, and this is a 170. The other ones are pretty much the same weights. So let's hop into the video here real quick, and we can kind of look at how they fly so you can get a better feel for it. So we'll start out, here's one of the Proton ones with the sparkly glimmer Proton, or whatever you want to call it. And these are the ones that should fly pretty much dead straight with just a nice light fade. These first set of throws are in no wind, so it'll give you a good idea of what to expect there. And generally, these guys should not turn over. They might flip up from a hyzer to flat, but that's about it. And if I throw them low, they should go straight all the way till they hit the ground. So let's take a look at this guy. Threw it on a baby hyzer, and it sort of just came up to flat, and then just a gentle fade at the end there. Another Proton one should be a similar flight. I was trying to throw these flat, but I have a problem where I tend to throw things on just a little bit of hyzer. So again, that one came out a little bit of hyzer, sort of flipped up that tiny bit and just rode straight. Now here's the Eclipse one. This one's a little bit lighter and a little bit more beat in, so it should turn a little bit, but it'll fight back a little harder than some. So you can see it's sort of a late, gentle turn, gentle fade. That's probably what I would call a -1 turn right there. Here is our Axiom Crave prototype Eclipse 2.0 Glow, whatever. The new ones that just dropped in the Pro Store a couple weeks ago. So they're brand spanking new and definitely flippy. So this one, I think I tried to throw it flat, and it should give you a good idea of how much it turns over. Yeah, it came out a little bit hyzer, but it still manages to turn and hold it all the way to the ground and cut just a little bit. This guy's just straight Neutron. This guy's going to turn over pretty hard too. Should cut roll if I throw it from a flat release. Nope, a little bit of hyzer again, but it's going to ride all the way over and ends up flexing out to flat. One more Proton. Oh yeah, I think this one there's a little bit more headwind, so they might turn a little bit more. It was no wind, and then there'd be like a 5 to 10 mile an hour headwind randomly. So these next couple are with a tiny bit of headwind, so the Proton ones even turn a little bit, which is something that I don't like throwing a Crave in a headwind for this reason. The littlest bit of headwind and they start to turn on me. So I would up to a volt if I have any sort of headwind, but no wind or a tailwind, these things just go, and they're just so straight. So this guy, again, with that little bit of headwind, even throwing it high, it just really carries off to the right. This guy should really turn over if there's still that little tiny bit of headwind. Yeah, it's definitely turning. He's going to hold that all the way and cut roll. Yep. Probably the same with this guy. At least I put that one on a little bit of a hyzer. But yeah, flexes all the way back to flat. And then the last round here of these, this is back to no wind at all. It was just dead calm. So I threw that one a little high, but again, fairly straight, and then just sort of tails off at the end. It's so nice for those long straight tunnels because it just holds straight for so long, and then that fade is so gentle. Whereas like a volt starts to fade pretty early, and it'll just have a long fade the whole flight. This one I threw on a little bit of an ante to see, you can get kind of good distance if you really flex them the right way. Try to throw these, I think, on a little bit more hyzer so that they would not flip over quite as much, but that one came out pretty flat. And again, so if you need an understable disc, these things are great too. If you want something you can turn over and go, dogleg right around a corner or something like that. These flippier Craves, that one was a little low, so it'll probably cut roll here. But they do turn and ride around a corner pretty well, and because they flex back out more than like a relay, you can count on them landing flatter if you get the height right. That one I threw on a pretty good hyzer, and it really just turns and holds and cuts. So that one is pretty much useless now except in a tailwind. So now we've got a few I want to show you with a 10 to 15 mile an hour headwind, and this is just kind of show you why I don't throw these things in a headwind. And I opt for a volt. So here we'll start with the Proton here. Throw it on a hyzer, it flips up and over. The Eclipse 1.0, this one will be even flippier, so again I'll have to throw it on a pretty good hyzer. Goes all the way out to the left and then rides all the way back. So I mean, there's some fun shot shaping opportunities if you trust it, but that's really not me. This thing into a headwind is just useless. It tends to just super steep hyzer and it's gonna flip all the way over and cut roll, I bet. Yeah, just can't even. All right, some more headwinds. This is the Proton again, should be slight flip up and ride right. That one holds a little bit better up against the wind. This is another Proton, should be the same. If you don't throw them too hard or the headwind isn't quite as strong or you get just the right hyzer angle, I mean, they can go a long ways and, get you there, but it's such a touchy shot. And again, this thing is just useless in a headwind. It's going to turn over hard from a pretty steep hyzer. Sorry, the sky is so bright you kind of lose it. Kind of blew out the shot, but it ends up way off to the right over here. All right, last round of throws here. These ones are going to be a tailwind, so that 10 to 15 miles an hour going the other way. So this is where the understable Craves really shine because they don't tend to, turn and cut roll anymore. Now they sort of have just a nice long S shape. And the Proton, the straighter Craves, tend to just pretty much still do the same things, fly perfectly straight, and then they just have a little bit more fade at the end. But you can get some massive distance with these. I have put a Crave over 400 feet with a tailwind, just because when you get the right wind, they glide forever and they get that nice long S. It's really beautiful to watch, but not a high percentage shot, but when you get one, it really feels good. So here we'll try a Proton one with a tailwind first. You can see it doesn't really turn over at all with this tailwind, just sort of rides and gentle fade. The Eclipse 1.0, this one should turn a little bit with the tailwind if I hit it hard enough. Throw it, kind of lose it in the sky, but it drifts back over here. Little bit of turn. The Proton one, again, this guy shouldn't turn much, if at all. Yep, just dead straight. and just a tiny bit of fade. This guy, this will really go on a tailwind if you get it right. So I think I hit this even on a little bit of hyzer. It flips up, rides off all the way over here, and back to center. And one more proton here for good measure. Again, straight, no turn, gentle fade. I've got a couple, these ones might be able to see a little bit better now that the sky's not as blown out. Flips up, rides a little bit right. You know, you get a strong enough tailwind, and even these things have trouble turning over. But they'll turn a lot more than my relays do, which is interesting because the relay is supposed to be a negative too. And I've always found those to be really straight, like a negative 0.5 turn and a 1 fade or something like that. So the relay kind of slots in between the two types of craves that I have, in my opinion. And I just got some more random tailwind shots here to close it out. But overall, if you're looking for a good fairway, you can't go wrong with a crave. The more understable ones are great for working on form because they'll really show if you're doing something right or not. They're very easy to flip them over, or as well you can get them to really go a long ways depending on how good your form is. So they can really reveal some of your flaws. They're great for shot shaping if you know what you're doing. If you really like throwing hyzer flips, these things would be great in the woods for long hyzer flip shots. Personally, I just like the proton craves for those super long, like 350 feet dead straight with almost no fade. So I sort of have a tiered system where if it's up to about 300 feet straight, dead straight ahead of me, I'm throwing an NV. If it goes further than that, out to maybe 315, 320 maybe, I'll throw a reactor and it'll fly exactly like that NV did. And then once I get above that, I'll throw a crave because it'll react like those other two, just all the way up to 350. So it's really nice for just a super straight long disc. And the more understable craves are also great. I actually bag them along with my relays, even though it's kind of an overlap, just because the relay has sort of a late turn, whereas the crave starts turning almost immediately. And the crave also flex out a little bit more, so it's more likely to land flat versus cut rolling. What else? Oh, and I also really like, this is one of the few discs that I like to throw powered down. So I've mentioned before, I prefer to just throw the same power level on everything and just change the disc, just because it's so hard to adjust your form and get it consistent. So this is one of the few discs that I'll throw at like 75% power. So if I want something to be really accurate and still get decent distance, I'll tend to reach for a crave and throw it at a little bit less power. So if I look at a hole that's like 315 or so feet, and I'm like, man, this would be a perfect hole for a reactor, but it's maybe a tighter fairway where I don't want to go full power on a reactor and risk missing my line, I can power down on a crave and get almost the exact same flight and same distance with way less power and effort. So it's a nice option to have for those shots as well. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about the crave. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say about the crave. If any of you guys are big crave fans, throw them a lot. If you've thrown the older ones or some of the new Sarah Hokom ones and have insights as to how flippy or stable they happen to be, I'd love to hear more about that because it seems like there's a lot of people with a lot of different experiences with the crave. So, for better or for worse, it kind of sucks that the mold consistency isn't there. But I mean, I have two very different styles of craves, and I like them both. I would just treat them as two completely different discs given the option, put different names on them. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about the crave. So yep, if you want to catch more of this content, I'll probably have some more videos coming out soon. Feel free to subscribe. You can throw a like on the video if you enjoyed it. And yeah, I guess I'll just catch you in the next one.